My name is Mike Tack. I work at Kohl's Department Stores as the Senior Manager of Leadership Development.
You and I are in leadership development, talent development. Our job is to build tools and put them in front of people. But that's not the real cost of doing this, right? To individuals or to organizations, the real cost is what we're not doing because we're doing this. So because we're, as a leader, because I'm going to slow things down and invest time to really get to know your triggers and how you typically react and what I can do to make you feel more safe in our environment, that requires an investment of time. That's time that I'm now not going to spend hitting a strategic objective or getting that next metric to the higher level. And there's a real cost to organizations for that I think are often not acknowledged at the executive level or at any level, right? I hear leaders in our institutes say, this is such a great concept. I want my people to learn this. I just don't know how I could find time for them to get better at this because they're so busy, because there's so much I need them to do. And it's an unwillingness as an organization sometimes to say, we'll pay for the class, but we can't pay for the time for you to use what the class taught you, right? What do you see? How do people succeed at this? I don't want to just be negative. How do people, is it one-offs? Is it individual leaders? How do people get to a place where they actually do pay the cost in time?
Mm-hmm. I think, what I have found very fascinating in the last couple of years, especially around this idea of like metrics and people, is that I think most organizations are they're very metric heavy as it relates to the output that they produce, the widget, the sales, the profit, the margin, whatever. And yet, with people, even though there's data out there, there's choice to ignore it. And we go off of gut, we go off of other things, which I find fascinating since we're the most complex thing in the world, and any data would actually be very, very helpful. And with that as a backdrop, I would say, well, first of all, there's a ton of data out there that would say, if you don't have a high functioning and a high performing team, then you're going to be less profitable. You're going to have worse outcomes. And I mean, even studies within organizations in themselves, and there's the classic one with Google, and I think it was Project Aristotle or something like that, where, going back to psychological safety, they talk about a team and how much more productive this high functioning team was because they did X, Y, and Z. So it's there's data out there. And so I'm if people are really struggling to do this and they want data, lose one team member of that and you've just paid for the cost of training. So I do think there's data out there. I do think it in today's world, it does take somebody strong to say, we need to slow down. We cannot go at this pace, and recognizing that actually just in general as people, we cannot run at that level of RPMs all the time. I got to attend something super cool once where it was talking about energy management and just saying you think about an athlete doesn't and can't perform at the highest level. Part of the most important thing they can do is recovery. And I think thinking about humans the same way, we cannot all go at that level. Taking that time to step off, to look back, to grow, to recharge actually has output and benefit in the future. Look, I don't know if any company does it right unless they mandate it. Some do, and then it takes a really strong leader to say we need to stop and we need to do it. But I will tell you, I have spent time recently with very high level people who take time to do this stuff. And so if it's important and you know that your people are important and your people drive the organization and you're a human-centered culture, I think you get to that point where you see the value in investing in your people versus just investing in the outcome or even the profit of the company, because that will all come, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I don't even know if I answered your question, by the way.
I think so. I think what you're driving at, or what I'm hearing, is that this is really about long-term thinking versus short-term thinking, that individual leaders and whole organizations that get stuck in short-term thinking focus on the now performance, right? What's our stock price today? What's the dashboard say that my leader is going to look at? Am I going to get my quarterly bonus? Right? This instant gratification way of approaching things is what leads people to ignore the data that you were talking about. And so if that's your social norm, if that's your cultural norm in the organization, then it takes the strong leader you're talking about, or the strong personality, to take the risk and say, I'm going to take the heat of short-term not satisfying those things. It's probably a pretty rare publicly traded company CEO who's willing to stand in front of a shareholders meeting and say, we're going to intentionally not be profitable right now so that we can be really profitable 3 years from now or 5 years from now, or so that we can build this exciting new business. That's a tough thing to do. And that same risk, I think, lives for a manager who's talking to their director and saying, I need to give my people space to recover. And so I'm going to have to say no to that initiative that you're asking us to take on.
And I also think, though, us in the development space want to believe that, we can solve all things with a program. I also think we have to redefine development too, and talk about things that you can learn every day and you can chip away at. I mean, I have had profound development experiences, like in and of himself. In that office when we did community build, I still remember it. I still remember the moment where I stepped out of the box on purpose, and I was like, whoa. However, I think we need to think about it differently in this time-starved world where, what do we pick up daily? What are these 1, 2, 3 things that, we can reframe to be development? And then all of a sudden, 9 months from now, you look back and you're like, wow, I actually am different. We have changed. We have evolved as a team by these small little things that we've been doing along the way too, that didn't take, time and time and time and time. So I do think it is a responsibility on us in this world to say, okay, well, how can we make sure that we are giving you really important experiences in smaller bites as well?